And welcome to another edition of Patriots 4th and 2. I am your host today, Derek Havens. Joining me as always is Mr. Steve Balistreri, and we have a special guest, a friend of the show. You know her, Classy Claire Cooper, joining us in the secret square at the bottom. We are all PatsFans.com bloggers, also Pat's Propaganda. I know that Claire is with them as well. You know her from the Claire perspective. She's joining us today on another draft prospect preview. Today, we are doing these skill positions that people have been begging us to do, tight ends and wide receivers. It's our last grouping of our draft prospect preview before Steve's and I annual first round mock draft next week, which we're both very excited for. And Steve, we need to start DMing and getting through that for next week's show. But, we are only 8 days away from the 2023 NFL draft, which I am so excited for. It's like a holiday for me, and I'm really looking forward to it. Again, real quick, everyone, please subscribe to us on YouTube and Apple Podcasts. Please like, share, leave us a review. It helps leave us high in the podcast ranking so other Patriots fans can find us. Before we start off with all of the prospects that we're going to go through, I'm going to start with our special guest, Steve. Sorry about that. Ladies first. Claire, how are you doing today?
I'm good, thank you. I am fresh off doing Locked On Patriots. So, yeah.
Awesome.
Just bouncing from one chair to the other. And while I can, quickly plug myself. You did mention Pat's Propaganda. Folks, please go over to Pat's Propaganda. Myself and Tom Schumellers have done the first ever Pat's Propaganda mock draft off, where we pit against each other our two mock drafts. So we've only done the first 4 picks. So do go over and have a look at that. And if you so wish, please go over to Twitter and vote for your favorite.
And of course, Claire had 2 tight ends in her first 4 picks. Although we were talking about that, through direct message on Twitter, and I was laughing. But she actually had a really good draft. I think Claire won that. That's just my opinion. Steve,
thanks,
how are we doing today?
I'm doing great, and yes, Claire didn't crash the gate this time, as somebody mentioned the last podcast. However. It's great to have her here. And did you see the smile on her face when you said we're going to start with tight ends?
Oh, yeah. She lit up.
There was this Joker grin on there.
That's only because it means I can get to my dinner sooner.
Well, look, so today we're talking about receivers and tight ends. And, Claire, just for, I think we might have talked about this last week when you joined the show, but Steve and I have been talking about, and a lot of people have talked, it's not just Steve and I, but a lot of people have been talking about the Patriots' 3 big needs, the top 3, tackle, corner, receiver, rank them however you want. We've talked about edge and tight end as kind of that 4th and 5th. The more I've thought about it this week, guys, I think tight end might be a bigger need than receiver. And I think you can make that case. And I do think that both tight end and edge are sneaky needs. Now, let me just say this. I think maybe 7-8 years ago, the Patriots were to draft. When they draft in the first round, we'd be saying, what do they need? Not this year, but next year. Because they didn't have as many holes. So they would always take, a position ahead. Okay, well, this year, if they didn't have as many holes, we'd be saying, Matt Judon's on the other side of 30. Uche's in a contract year. They could use an edge player. They'd be saying Hunter Henry and Mike Gesicki are both good tight ends. They're on 1-year deals. Well, right now they're not in the luxury to have that because they have so many other needs. But I do think both those positions are very curious. And this tight end class is incredibly deep. I think the 3 deepest positions in this entire draft class are corner, edge, and tight end. So I think they're going to take a tight end in the first 3 rounds. I'm starting to come around to that pretty strongly. I could be totally wrong, but I think they're going to do it. Now, I don't think they'll take a tight end in the first round. So I don't think your Michael Mayers or your Dalton Kincaid, which we'll talk about, will be an option. I wouldn't be 100% shocked, but I'd be pretty surprised. But I am thinking tight end is going to be more, prominent than some people think, because what I think is going to happen is they'll take a guy who will have some kind of contributing role, and they're going to let one of either Hunter or Gesicki go at the end of the year, depending on how it goes for them. So That to me is just how I feel it coming. That's just my opinion. Steve, what are your thoughts on that? And then Claire, I'll go to you before we start breaking down the players.
Yeah, I mean, when it comes to contracts for next year, I think this is a big year for both Hunter and Gesicki because one, Hunter Henry seemed to really gather steam at the tail end of 2021 when him and Mac kind of got their chemistry going. And then, with him being more familiar with the offense. So we kind of know how he fit. I'm just throwing out last year because that was an abomination, and we all know what was the cause of that. With Gesicki, I mean, he's coming into the offense brand new. So it's going to take him a little time to get acclimated to it. And, and with Mac as well. And I think, if both of them turn in really good, solid seasons this year, that's a good problem to have, deciding which one of two really good guys that you're going to keep.
Yeah.
So,
no, I agree.
Oh, yeah.
What do you think, Claire?
Yeah, I agree with Steve. I think, to be honest with you, as soon as you said, next year they might be deciding between Hunter and Gesicki, they might not need to. It depends who they draft this season. If they, for example, they're not going to, but like you said, if they were to draft in the first round, they are drafting a guy to replace Gesicki or Hunter next year. They are definitely drafting their replacement. It depends how far down kind of the rounds that they go. Because it depends how long the guy needs to develop. Because we all know how the tight end position needs time to develop. It's a difficult position to grasp. And I mean, it's like, Johnny Smith, we don't want to talk about him too much, but yeah, he grasping the playbook and stuff like this. There was many reasons why he didn't fit, but that was something that they did come out and say. And it takes a while for them to find their feet, that kind of thing. So I think that's significant of it interlocks with how far down they draft, how later they draft, what sort of developmental position that they draft the tight end in. So I think that's really going to flag what they're going to do with these two guys. Alternatively, obviously, if Gesicki doesn't really kind of fit in, we know that Hunter does. We know that he's productive. We know that he works well with Mac. So that's great for the future. If Gesicki also turns out to be kind of a really good weapon, as people like to say, and really fits in, I think it's, a lot of different factors really are looking for what kind of going forward. But it's definitely a position.
Yeah, and to your point, it's like if they take a guy in the first day or two, so the first 3 rounds, I think that shows like, hey, this could be a guy that could be a starter or could be heavily in the mix. This is a guy in the 4th, 5th round. Well, he's a flyer. It's like you don't know. But it's weird. They don't really have a blocking tight end. Like both Henry and Gesicki are not blockers. I mean, Hunter got
Henry
killed
a bit, but he has his moments, but he's not there as a blocker. No,
but he had a really bad year, I think, on the whole as a blocker last year, as a blocker solely. Okay, and Gesicki might be even more receiver than he is. He's like more of that what they call quote unquote the power slot now, with Gesicki being like the bigger, the bigger guy.
Gesicki's a big wide receiver.
Yeah, he basically is. He's more receiver than tight end,
But the one thing I am looking forward to, I didn't mean to cut you off there. But,
no, please go.
When it comes to these two guys, Bill O'Brien's offenses, when they work the best, it's going through the tight ends.
Yep.
And if he runs that kind of the same way that he has traditionally, I think that will be a really fun offense to watch because both of these guys can be weapons, in the passing game. And, and again, last year with the blocking, I know Hunter isn't known as a blocker anyway, but, this blocking schemes were so screwed up last year. I mean, look at how the offensive line played. And we thought that was going to be a strength of the team, going into the season. So,
yeah.
I throw all that out.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, so let's dive into the prospects, okay? And we'll start with tight ends, and we'll start with the kind of the first round guys. Now, I don't know if you guys would disagree with me. Please interject. I would say Michael Mayer and Dalton Kincaid are kind of both considered first round prospects. Would either one of you throw anyone else into that first round conversation?
I think, although I know that it depends which one you look at, but a few people have got Washington going really quite high.
Yep.
I think he's one of those.
He's a freak.
He's a freak.
Yeah,
he is.
Somebody could be like, that's it, I've got to have him, and they take him really early, or he really just gets missed by and he drops. I don't know if I think he is a first round. I don't know. I haven't quite decided, but I wouldn't be surprised if someone snaps him up in the first round because they're so desperate to get him.
No, that's fine. I mean, he's Darnell Washington out of Georgia is absolutely we can absolutely put him in that conversation. So we'll say the three. Okay, I think all three are fascinating. I could easily see Bill Belichick. I mean, liking all three guys. Michael Mayer's kind of like your kind of do it all guy. He's a good blocker. He can catch passes. Dalton Kincaid. I don't want to say he's like Travis Kelce because that's really high praise, but he's like Travis Kelce light. Like he's more of a receiver than tight end. He's not a blocker. He's a fluid guy.
Gesicki.
He's very similar to Gesicki. I've seen him compared to Zach Ertz. Like guys like that. I can very much see that. Darnell Washington is your guy who's standing at 6'7", 265. He's like Gronk almost. He's got like 35-inch arms. He can block. He can catch. He can run fast. I mean, he ran a 4.6 at that speed. Is insane. It's insanity. All three guys bring something different to the table. I like all three players. I think they all can bring some. Again, I think Kincaid fascinates me the most. Michael Mayer, to me, is a really good, solid player. I don't think he's ever going to be super special. I just think he's going to be a really solid player, But is that what the Patriots need at 14? I don't know. I mean, Bill has talked about how hard the tight end, something that Claire just talked about. Bill Belichick has talked about how hard tight end is for the offense because they have to know both passing routes and run blocking schemes. So it is hard. And he does usually, I don't want to say cherish, but he does usually, kind of elevate tight ends in his mind because of how much they have. And Steve just talked about how Bill O'Brien, how he has prioritized his tight ends at his offense. So it's not something that we should totally rule out. Claire, who do you of the three first round guys that we're talking about? Tell me who you like the most.
This is really tricky because way before kind of combine draft stuff started, Michael Mayer was my draft crush. He was my draft crush before draft crush type thing. Washington is this, Steve says he's a freak. I call him a beast, I think, in one of my articles that I wrote recently for Pat's Propaganda. So, he's this specimen. The thing that just niggles at the back of my mind about that is he kind of, there's a really good chance that he's a bust. There's the Jonnu Smith risk for me personally. I think it's like he could be really, really great and people are telling me how amazing it is and he looks really good and fantastic, exactly the same as Jonnu Smith. And then we're like, what? And I have this little just nagging concern of you draft him high, you put him in, you have these mass expectations and he ends up just really in the NFL being like a very athletic blocker. And I think that's the thing that's just making me shy away so slightly. However, if the Patriots took him, I'd freak out. It'd be amazing. That's completely fine. I'd be like, oh yeah, whatever. Oh yeah, completely. But to me, if you put them kind of on a tray in front of me and was like, you can have one of these, which one would you have? I think I'd have to kind of sway towards Mayer simply because he was my draft crush and he is a well-rounded tight end. I just think that you get more of a guarantee with him. Now, don't get me wrong, Washington, yes, he could end up being the most amazing tight end since Gronk. And he has that kind of, is it kind of a low floor, high ceiling, situation possibly? It's just Mayer to me is you getting what you're expecting to get, and that's kind of how I feel. So before I go to Steve, I'll tell you, Claire, what you're talking about. As we're talking about draft, we're talking about you think Mayer has the highest floor, but maybe not the highest ceiling. So he's safer. So he's a safer pick. That's what maybe
in the draft world we call that. You're like, oh, He's the safer pick. He's got the highest floor. Steve, what about you? Who do you like?
I'm flip-flopping back and forth with this. If they were to go early, I really like Washington because we know the Patriots like to run the football.
Mm-hmm.
And he's just like having another tackle out there.
Yep.
When you have an extra tackle that can road grade in the running game, and then he can also run routes and make guys miss after the catch.
Yep.
I mean, he's not just a plotter out there. I mean, yeah, he's he is a really gifted guy. And, I'm kind of thinking, the Patriots would like that because, the top guy there, Kincaid, he's another guy that you're not going to draft him to block. So then they would have three tight ends who can't block.
Exactly.
So, to me, it would come down to Michael Mayer. And I think, like you said, Derek, he has the highest floor of any of the guys. He's a very good pass receiver. I mean, we all know that. He's a good blocker.
Mm-hmm.
But then again, it's nice to have that road grader that can still catch the football. So if I was going to go early, I might go Washington. I'm leaning Washington.
So I think Washington is the most fascinating of the three because I think that if he hits his true potential, he could be an absolute just stud.
I don't disagree at all.
Kincaid, I feel like, is so intriguing because he does have that Gesicki, Travis Kelce, Zach Ertz kind of mold where it's like, he's a matchup nightmare. Michael Mayer, I'm throwing comparisons out, and I don't want to elevate them too much when I say this. I'm just telling you what he kind of reminds me. He kind of reminds me of like a Jason Witten, where it's like he's going to be a really good player for 10 years, like Michael Mayer. He can block, he can catch, he's going to make some good plays. He just does everything that you need him to. Like he is is he the most exciting tight end you've ever seen? No, but I was just going to say,
sorry to interrupt you, Derek. I was just going to say that's why you don't like him. He's not exciting you. See, he excites me because he's such a rounded tight end. I find it majorly exciting.
He's not hard on the eyes either, so I don't know about that. I don't know.
I'm not going to throw any comments out because I will just get hammered if I start saying things like that. So as a woman, I am going to refrain from commenting on anything in regards to that. But with him being a well-rounded tight end, that's kind of my jam. That's what gets me excited. And I get what you're saying. You kind of know what you're getting from him. But you're getting a really, really, really good one. Come on. Stop going for the excitement. Go for the sort of the dependability, the reliability, the availability, as Belichick likes to say.
Well,
get the guy who's going to be what you want him to be. And I think for me, he kind of ticks that box in that element. But he's not exciting, so he's not making you tingle, is he, Derek? I can tell.
And the thing with Mayer, though, is you have a coach that could take advantage of all of his positives with Bill O'Brien.
Yep.
So, there was some years where Jason Witten was just kind of, a really good player. And there was a couple of years where he was an absolute force out there.
Sure.
And it all depends on how the coach decides to use him and creating matchups for him. And a guy like Mayer could end up being your quarterback's best friend.
Yep. No, I 100% agree. Let's put it this way. If I didn't look around the roster and I didn't see, some severe needs at other positions that I would value higher priority, I would be thrilled with any of these guys. And at the end of the day, if they took either of them in all three of these guys, if they took any of them in the first round, I don't know if I'd love it at 14. If they traded back and they took one, I would. At the end of the day, I think all three are good football players. I really do.
Mm-hmm.
I just look at, I think corner is just a higher priority. I think tackle's a higher priority. I think you can make the case for tight end versus receiver. Again, we can do that a different show, but I kind of laid out my case earlier. I'm starting to wonder if they think that. Again, because of the Bill O'Brien factor, because I know how much Bill Belichick prioritize his tight end. I mean, this is a guy who took
Just
Rob
ask him about
Gronkowski.
Mark Bavaro.
Yeah, Mark Bavaro. It's like this is a guy who took Rob Gronkowski when a lot of teams had him off the board because of his back injury coming out of University of Arizona. Bear down. So I just feel like this is I couldn't help it. I just feel like this is a position that we shouldn't overlook because of who's in the room and the guys in the room. Are here and these prospects are here. But again, it's not just these three guys. This is a deep class. So let's move on to day 2, guys. Let's go to second and third rounders. This is where the fun is. Get your notes out, Claire. Okay, here we go. Here's where the fun starts.
Because
I'll start with Steve first. Okay. Steve, give me one of your guys that you like in the day 2 range. Could be second, could be third round. Tell me somebody that you like, or 2 guys. Let's have an open conversation. I want to spend about 10, 12 more minutes on tight ends, and then we'll take a break and go to receivers.
Well, one of the guys that I like, maybe in day 2, if he's around, Sam Laporta out of Iowa.
I love him.
Don't mind.
I love Sam. Keep going.
I mean, he has excellent speed for a tight end, and he can make guys miss. He's a pretty exciting player to watch as well. The other guy I like is Tucker Kraft from South Dakota State.
He's also picking up some big steam right now, and I think Todd McShay was over him. I want to give credit to Todd McShay, Swampscott's finest. He was all over Tucker Kraft early in this process, but
yes,
please
he was.
Continue.
Yeah, and the only, I'm not going to say a caveat, because I think this guy can play no matter where he ends up, but he was in the FCS and he just dominated there. I mean, he dominated people there. So that would be the only slight concern with him. But and a third guy I like is Luke Shoemaker out of Michigan.
Yep, I love him too.
I think he's NFL ready. He's an inline tight end, which, is kind of what they need. Mm-hmm. But he can still run away from, linebackers. If he's isolated on a linebacker, he'll run away from him. So, I like him. He played at a big time, college program. I thought he played really well last year. He caught 35 passes and a couple of scores, where they don't really, they don't target tight ends as much in that offense.
No,
but I can hear Claire flipping through her notes.
I think Shoemaker. Okay, so if I may, Claire, I just want to quickly rip through the 3 guys that Steve mentioned. I'll keep it quick because I want your take. Luke Shoemaker to me is fascinating. For one, the school he went to, because the Patriots seem to love Michigan guys. And Shoemaker also, he's got the prototypical size, 6'5", 250. He does things both in the running and the passing game. Yeah, the offense for Michigan, like Steve said, doesn't like highlight tight ends by any chance. He was still productive. I thought it was interesting. I was reading an article the other day that Lance Zierlein had him compared to Dawson Knox. I thought that was fascinating because I thought that was a player when Dawson, I believe, was coming out of, I want to say, Ole Miss when he was coming out. I thought that was a player the Patriots could look at, and this is someone who I think could bring similar production to this offense. I really, really liked him as someone who I think you can get the 3rd, maybe even the 4th round, because that's how deep this class is. I thought that Luke Musgrave is an interesting guy to kind of bring into the conversation from Oregon State, given his size. I think that he's another guy who maybe is not 100% ready, but someone who would be perfect for this system because he can do all these things that we're talking about. He can he's fluid in his movements, and he can kind of be a matchup nightmare. Maybe he's not 100% ready right now, but we're talking about someone who could sit behind Gesicki and Hunter Henry, have a little bit of a role, and then kind of elevate. I think Musgrave fits that. And Sam Laporta, I think, is fascinating. I mean, talk about someone who, he just has great physical ability, who can, you know, he was a highly targeted player at Iowa. You know, despite what a lot of people think, but the Ferentz and Belichick connection, the Patriots haven't really drafted a whole lot of Iowa players. But I do think, you know, I just think that he has like an above average starting potential, and he could be someone who could be a gem on day 2. I just think he's fascinating and brings a lot to the table. Claire, please chime in. This is your world right now. We're deep into Claire. We're deep into the Claire tight end, you know, class. Tell me who you like on day 2.
Well, the big thing is Steve stole all my kind of favorite ones. There are others, obviously, but he stole my favorites because every single time I've done a mock draft, and I've done far too many this year, just for the record, every single time I picked up Sam Laporta at 46. And I know he's not a blocking tight end. He isn't necessarily what the Patriots need right now, but he looks so good. And being kind of like that sort of second round kind of guy, they haven't got to sacrifice their first round pick. They can get, you know, the top cornerback if he's there, or the top tackle, depending on who's there. So for me, it was a little bit of a sweet spot, as in you're getting a sort of a high grade guy, but you aren't losing that kind of top thing that you need to, but you're still getting one of the top guys. The one thing is, like you said, Shoemaker, he's really kind of, he ticks a load of boxes. He's been on my radar for a while. But when you look at kind of articles, when you look at mock drafts, that sort of thing, and when you have a go on like the simulators and stuff, he does drop. He does kind of go down round 3, round 4. So he's definitely one that I reckon if the Patriots go for it, they should pick up 2. For me, he's my number 2 all the time when I've kind of done that kind of thing. When he drops down the board, Shoemaker is definitely the guy. And like you said, he kind of covers a lot of things. He seems really well-rounded, and they've got that time to put him behind Gesicki, behind Henry, possibly, to sort of pick things up, to develop and to grow more. And he's just a really interesting player.
He's a weird draft crush for me. I have no idea what it is. I like where he's gonna go. I like what he brings to the table. I like his upside. He's not splashy. It just, you know, I just like what Luke Shoemaker brings to the table, and especially where he's going to be drafted. Is there someone that Steve didn't mention? I don't put you on the spot. Is there someone that he didn't mention that you kind of like, even if it's day 3, because we can bleed into day 3 too?
Yes, there's definitely a later round guy, because he needs a little bit of work, and I've got to find my notes as to where all my details. But Josh Weil, or Wiley, depending on where you come from, Cincinnati guy. He's a long guy, smooth run. He's 6'6" and comes in at 248. So he's a decent size. I'm just trying to find my notes on him, but he's definitely someone that sort of drops down the board. But he kind of, he pops up on my later sort of picks now, and I'm just trying to find his details. Sorry.
Well, so he's a bigger guy out of Cincinnati. I think his last name is pronounced Weil. I think that's how it's pronounced.
Weil.
It's Wiley. Okay, Wiley.
Yeah, I thought it was Wiley.
I was kind of curious. He's interesting. So I noticed him when I was watching. It was like the Cincinnati spring game last year, because I was interested in, obviously, Sauce Gardner, but I was kind of interested in Brian Cook, the safety, as well. And so they were, competing against each other. And I thought that he was actually pretty smooth. He's a guy who's not getting a ton. He's not getting a ton of, I guess, hype in this class, because I think it is just, again, so deep. But he's someone who I just think needs, again, another guy who I just think needs some work on day 3. He just needs some more time in the weight room. He got knocked out of his his routes really often. He was redirected constantly. It felt like, he's someone who, again, he's an athlete. He has a big frame. I just think he needs to add more size to him a little bit and probably polish up. But another one who's a kind of a projection, and Steve, I want to go back to Tuck Kraft, who you mentioned. Again, another one who's kind of picked up some steam along this process. Regarding Tucker Kraft, what do you like most about his game? And what round do you see him potentially going?
Yeah, when it comes to Tucker Kraft, I really think he'll go in the third. But I mean, you look at him, he's 6'5", 255. He's got good size. You know, he runs well. You look at his 10-yard split, 1.59. That's really good for
Really
a guy
good.
of his size.
Yep.
I mean, you know,
You and I are big into the splits this year, and I like it. I think it's
because,
smart.
you know, I mean, again, your tight ends occasionally, yes, they're going to run down the seam, so their 40 time is important. But a lot of times, you know, your big tight ends, those are your safety valves. You know, guys, when they recognize a blitz coming, which Gronkowski was phenomenal at, him and Brady, they wouldn't even have to communicate. They just look at each other and they could sense it. So he's going to have to cut that route short. And if you have that 10-yard split speed, you know, you can get open. But, you know, he's got a good frame. He's faster than he looks, I think. And, you know, he's got really good transition after he catches the football. You know, the only thing with him I thought was, you know, the level of competition, of course, in FCFs, you know. So, but other than that, I think he's tough. He plays like you would envision a big tight end. And, you know, he has the capability and, you know, the skills to be a finesse type of receiver. So he can do it all. And I really like that in him. That's why I think he's a good fit, you know, regardless of where they can pick him up.
Yeah. No, I mean, again, a lot of these guys we're talking about, you can talk me into almost any of them, which is why, as much as I like the top 3 guys that we started with, I can be talked into the fact like, hey, if they go tackle or corner or vice versa, you know, in the first 2 picks, if they take a guy in the 3rd round, you know, I think they can get a really good player. And maybe it's not someone who's super flashy this year. I think they're going to get someone who can contribute and grow into a player in the 3rd or 4th round this year. I believe that deeply. I think that there's a lot of guys. Before we take a quick break, guys, and move over to receivers, any honorable mentions? Anyone that we feel like we need to talk about?
Did you want me to go over Wiley, or did you cover him enough?
Why don't you give me your thoughts on him and we'll take a break.
Okay, cool. Yeah, he was definitely my lower round. He's like a Shoemaker to me. He's actually even lower. So if the Patriots go quite low or quite late, sorry, for want of a better term, if they go quite late when they pick up their first one, I think he's kind of the second one that you pick up even that little bit later sort of thing. So yeah, I mean, they've got him pegged as maybe a 2nd round guy because he's an NFL starter, but a lot of other people have got him much lower. So he's got real receiving production, ability to be a threat downfield. Let's just have a look at the notes. Yeah, he needs some work as a blocker. So again, if they're looking at ticking the blocker box, they've got to kind of be careful where they're picking up. But like you said, Shoemaker, he's quite well-rounded as well. So he's kind of my dark horse, my later round, hoping when the boards are falling and they haven't maybe taken that second tight end and they've taken all the spots that, you know, they're taking all the things that they need to. He's the one that I'm sort of sitting there waiting for them to pick him up kind of thing.
Yeah.
I'm surprised, Claire, that you went with Wiley. I thought for your dark horse, you'd be going after a guy like Davis Allen out of Clemson. Did you have any notes on him?
No, I haven't. Is this someone I haven't looked into enough and should be? Oh, I feel like I may have missed it.
Steve, why don't you share your thoughts on Davis Allen?
Yeah, now I'm interested.
Yeah, he's not a flashy guy.
Yeah,
but he's been consistent and with his play and production for 3 years at Clemson.
At a very high ranking school, you know.
Yes.
Oh, him. Okay.
Yeah.
He pushed really high on the blocking. Yeah, I'm just looking at all my combine notes because Wiley was really good. The ones that really stand out to me a lot when it comes to the combine and stuff is that blocking explosion, pushing the sled exercise. And I think that, for me, that's like one of my most favoriteest bits as well. And when they stay really low and they get it really smooth, that's really good. Washington was great at that for such a big guy. He was really good at that. the other guy was the other guy. Musgrave, he came out really quite good at that. And
Musgrave and Shoemaker for me are both guys that I'm very intrigued with. I like Laporta too. I think Laporta's going to go a little earlier than I want to take a tight end. I like all these guys. I just am looking at where I think they should take a guy like this and where they're going to go. And that's why I keep coming back to Shoemaker and Musgrave, because I just think that's going to be the range that they're going to be able to be like, okay, and
the thing with Musgrave too is, we know he got an injury last year, but when he's healthy, he might be the best athlete in the whole tight end class.
Sure. Yeah. No, he's terrific.
No, Coons. He smashed all the tight end records, didn't he? With I'm forgetting what it's called now, but all his numbers were kind of like the top out of any tight end ever or something. I have the information.
So that's another.
Over 1,000 tight ends going back to 1987. Sorry to cut you off, Derek. Most athletic tight ends ever. Zach Kuntz was first ever overall since back in 1987. Number one.
He totally dusted everybody this year in terms of combine, and Zach Kuntz is out of Old Dominion, by the way. And this is another guy that Todd McShay's been really high on. I think
he's
that
huge as well.
Here's the thing about him.
Skinny legs.
I would just say that I'm not gonna sit here and pretend that I've watched every snap of Zach Kuntz. I haven't. But
me neither.
But I think that he could be one of those guys who he could. I don't want to. This is like a diss, but I don't really mean it to be. He could be a combine warrior. Okay, like he could be a guy who just tests really well. Because
I agree.
When you talk, I watched like one or two of his little highlight films and like one of his games, and I'm looking at him and I'm like, he doesn't look like the same guy that we saw testing. I'm not sure it's the same guy who is on the film. And so to me is always like a little bit of a red flag, but he is an athlete. I mean, there's no doubt about it. I mean,
one more name to look out for. Sorry.
Okay, last one.
Very
because
quickly.
We gotta go. We're already bleeding into receiver time, Claire.
That's okay. Payne Durham out of Purdue. Okay. Now he's one of those, definitely the later ones.
I think Evan Lazar mentioned him the other day, actually. But continue.
Oh, okay. I picked it up from Taylor Kyles. He mentioned him on Twitter as well. Chris did make the show. He did make the show.
Hey, Chris.
I've looked kind of into him. He's a later draft pick. He's got inline size and demeanor. He's competitive and versatile blocker, which is good. We like it when they tick the blocker box. He was at the Senior Bowl and he's a lacrosse player. So he could be on Belichick's radar.
So Evan did mention him because, and I don't want to speak for Evan, but I'm pretty sure he mentioned him because he was talking about Shrine Bowl players, and the Patriots were there. So that is not something to dismiss. Excellent name to throw out there, Claire, for real. I was actually just listening to yesterday's Patriots Unfiltered podcast last night when I was grilling, and I heard I mentioned Cam Durham. So that's definitely a name to keep in mind. Claire, do you want to join us for receivers, or are you gonna drop off?
I'm going to bounce because receiver is just really not my jam. So
that's okay.
Actually, no, I'll listen to you guys. Go on. I'll listen to you guys and I will learn. I will, because I really haven't looked at wide receiver this year. I did tight ends. That was the receiver thing. So school me in wide receiver.
All right. We're going to step aside real quick for podcast purposes, and we'll be back right after this. All right, we're back on Patriots 4th and 2 here. We got Steve Balestrieri and Claire Clazy Cooper here joining us as we're talking about receivers, tight ends. We just spent way too long on tight ends, but Claire's here, so we figure we'll give her an extra few minutes on that. Steve, we have to talk about wide receivers. Claire, please jump in when you want to. Okay, you are welcome to jump in whenever. When we're talking about the 2023 NFL draft, I would say there's a lot of intriguing receivers, Steve, but really, it's a really weird class. There's a lot of small guys, like a lot of guys that are a lot of guys that, I just want to we need to give some protein shakes and some peanut butter and jelly sandwiches too. We got to pack some weight on these guys.
Need some burgers. Let's not mix it. They need burgers.
Yeah.
Peanut butter, burgers.
McDonald's or something. I don't know what we got to do. But it's a weird class. I think that there's a lot of intriguing players. I'm not sure there's that many first round players. A class that I think the Patriots could be potentially interested with a couple of guys at the top, but I'm not sure they're going to go that route at 14, Steve. I'm just not sure about it. I'd be pretty shocked. I mean, I do like two of the higher end profile receivers. I just don't think the Patriots are going to pull that trigger at 14. What about you?
No, but I wouldn't be shocked if they did, given the amount of time they spent with one particular guy.
Okay. All right. Well, you save that till we get to them. So I'm going to start first with who I think is the best receiver in the class, and that's Jackson Smith-Njigba from Ohio State. I think he's the best. He's 6'1", 195. I mean, he's smooth. He had a really, really tough year last year, but I mean, everything he does is it's just so easy with him. He just has such poise, and he moves smoothly, and he knows his leverage, and he averaged 192 receiving yards per game the last 5 games of 2 years ago. And this is Ohio State. This is a big time thing. Now you have some really, really good you have a really good player over there in Marvin Harrison Jr., who's going to be probably a top 5 pick, 10 pick next year. He's a slot receiver, but this is the reason I highlight him, Steve, first. And there's another guy here too. I think this goes back to something Dante Scarnecchia said last year. Mac Jones needs his security blanket. I think Jackson Smith-Njigba could be that guy for him. I don't know where you have him ranked, Steve. He's my first receiver. Tell me what you think about him.
Oh, I think he's the top receiver in the class.
Okay.
He has decent size, and like you said, he's smooth. His route running ability, he looks like a seasoned pro already.
Yep.
I mean, those, that his ball skills, these are things that, he's so good at. And if they were going to move at 14 and, for a wide receiver, and he ended up in New England, I don't think you could argue with that.
No.
I
think that he's the only, to me, Steve, he's the only receiver I would feel really good about them taking at 14. There's another guy who I really like, and we'll get to in a second. I know who we're going to talk about.
Yep.
Okay. But I still think that I wouldn't be mad about the next guy, just tease. But I would be, I just think 14 might be, I think for JSN, I think 14 is a good spot for him. I'm not so sure about the next guy. I think I might want to trade down a couple slots. But then again, we talk about this all the time. If you whether you should, where is he in the draft? If he's a good player, who gives a crap if he's at 14 or 20 or 24? Who cares? So let's talk about him. Okay, Zay Flowers, Boston College. I know that's who you want to talk about.
Yeah, right. I mean, the Patriots have been showing an inordinate amount of interest in this guy.
I mean, you hear? By the way, did you hear Matt Groh's press conference yesterday? He's talking about receiver. They talk about the receiver class. Did you hear what he said? He said Zay and others. He literally mentioned him by first name. He was the only receiver that he mentioned in the entire class. Which
probably means they're not going to pick him, right?
Yes, exactly. He's just throwing it out there to throw y'all off.
Yeah, we call this a smoke screen.
Yes, indeed.
The one thing I've been harping on, and this, Derek, we've been doing the show for 11 years.
Yeah.
Almost 12 now.
Yeah.
Is the fact that for this Patriots offense, and we believe that Bill O'Brien's going to reinstate the Patriots offense that we all know and like, you need a slot guy. And you need a slot guy who can get open and separate. And that, when we talked about the Patriots passing game last year, of course, there was issues with the blocking and the whole play design, whatever. And again, I'll reiterate myself that I said twice already, throw out last year. But it's been an ongoing issue for a couple of years that the wide receivers have trouble separating. I mean, we all know it. But even though Flowers is a smaller guy, he plays in the slot. I think he's the best guy for pure separation in this whole wide receiver class.
He is slippery. He's slippery.
Good.
Yep.
He is that good.
Can I ask you both a question, though?
Yes, please.
The thing for me, always with the wide receivers, is when I've kind of been looking at things, it seems there's quite a gap between like these top two that you're talking about, and then the rest. And I don't think the rest is what the Patriots kind of need. They've already got what would be better than the rest for me, generally speaking. So for me, it's like the top ones or sort of what's the point? And I know that's a little bit generalized, and I appreciate that.
No, I know exactly.
And the
what
thing
you're saying.
is, if they were to take one of these guys and say, and I know how you're talking about Flowers, he may drop, he may not, he may go at like 13 or something like this. There's so much uncertainty when it comes to the draft. Do you think that this Patriots team now, as in right now, not who you like better, not who you think is better, this Patriots team would benefit from using that first round pick on a wide receiver or a cornerback? Because the explosiveness of each of those athletes is really key. And they need kind of in sort of from what you're saying is you think they need both. So what do you think? You can only take one. We all know this. So where would you go? What do you think would be the best impact on the Patriots team that we have got right now, the cornerback or the wide receiver?
The best impact would probably be a receiver for the short term, but I think I'd lean cornerback. I know that's probably a confusing answer, but if I had to pick right now, cornerback or wide receiver, I'd say corner. Because I think that if you let's say, for example, like they somehow got like Christian Gonzalez or Devon Witherspoon, who were two
that's kind of where I'm going. The top ones in their class. That's what we're talking about. The top in their class.
Because I think
you can only have one of them.
I think the top few cornerbacks are better than the top few receivers, like in terms of pure talent. I do think that the Patriots need a guy like what Steve and I are talking about. I do think it's important. I mean, the real answer is they need both. If I had to pick one, if I'm looking at like if you say, let's just say they take Christian Gonzalez hypothetically, and let's just say he is a stud. Look at their cornerback room all of a sudden. You have a really good young cornerback. Then you have a second-year cornerback in Jack Jones, who showed a lot last year. You have a really solid Jonathan Jones slot corner and a versatile another slot corner and Marcus Jones. You're feeling pretty good about corner all of a sudden. Okay, you're feeling really good about that room. Plus the versatility they have in the safeties. Okay, I know Devin McCourty's not here anymore. They still have some good players. So I would say if you can land a really good corner, if you ask me right now what I had to take, I would take a really good corner early and roll the dice later on receiver. But I could also flip this and say
you can only have one.
No, I gave you my answer. I'm just telling you that Mac Jones, like Dante said, like we talked about all last year, it's evident his guy was Jacoby Myers that he went to in a pinch. Now Jacoby's gone. And Jacoby, love him to death. I'm not kicking any dirt on him on the way out the door. This is not a state secret. He was never the athlete that like Julian Edelman was for Brady that could get the ball. He got open and caught the ball. And those were the two most important things. But he couldn't bring anything else to the table. I think Zay Flowers could take that and elevate the offense, elevate Mac Jones. That's how I feel. So you could make that case. I just would rank cornerback if I had to go higher. What about you, Steve?
Well, if you're asking me in a bubble what the bigger need is, I think it's cornerback.
Yep.
But one thing I will say to that,
you guys,
hey, we're giving you the answer. We're just adding qualifiers.
No. Hear me out on this. What's the one thing that Bill Belichick has excelled in that he never gets credit for? Late in the draft or finding diamonds in the rough and undrafted free agents.
Undrafted corners and offensive linemen, man. That's what it is.
And, he picks these guys out that nobody's ever heard of. Malcolm Butler. I mean, how many Jonathan Jones was undrafted.
Yep. He just got his pilot's license, by the way. I thought that was cool.
Yes, he got his pilot's license, which was really cool.
Yeah.
Now, I think you could sell me on cornerback, especially if one of those top guys You mentioned Witherspoon, Gonzalez,
Porter.
maybe even Joey Porter up there. If you told me that they were going to pick one of those guys at 14, I have zero issue with it, because since we're talking about wide receivers, there's another guy similar to Zay Flowers. Unfortunately, he's even smaller, but he is electric, and that's Josh Downs out of North Carolina.
So here's what someone I asked somebody. This is a long way of going about it. Somebody who's familiar with the team, who works in the media now. And I said, "What do you think about Josh Downs? He seems like a Patriots player." And he goes, "Screams Danny Amendola." And I go, I totally see it. But he goes, but more athletic, So I think Josh Downs, a tremendous day 2 player. I mean, I think he's going to go round 2. I hope he's going round 3, because if he can somehow fall in day 3, or I'm sorry, round 3, I'm going to be pounding the table if the Patriots haven't taken a receiver to go up and get him, because I think he'd be a perfect fit in their offense.
Yeah.
So conclusion, go on, Steve.
Go ahead.
I was going to say, so in conclusion, we can take a tackle with the first pick, then a tight end, then we can get Josh Downs, and then we haven't got to worry about cornerback, because we're going to get some undrafted free agents that are amazing. I tell you what, that sounds like a really, really good draft to me. I'm very happy now. No.
No. We're going Broderick. We're going Broderick Jones. We're going, Julius Brents. Yeah. We're going Josh Downs, and then we'll take Luke Musgrave in the 4th.
We're talking hypotheticals for the point of today, because we're talking these positions, and if they were to take a wide receiver in round 1, then we would go for those guys, or round 2, some of the guys we mentioned. The one guy that everyone's talking about that I'm really leery of, and maybe I shouldn't be, is Quentin Johnson.
Yeah. I'm glad you brought him up, Steve, because he's on my list. He scares me. Okay. He's
for the Patriots. He scares me.
Yes, he's 6'3", he's 6'3", 210. I mean, he's way different. He's the outlier in this class. He's an incredibly big framed. I mean, I heard Todd McShay. I've mentioned him a few times on this pod. I heard Todd McShay compare him to a pterodactyl, and I thought that was hilarious and also quite true. Lance Zierlein compared him to Alshon Jeffrey. Can you imagine if they got him and then Washington on? Can you imagine an offense? I know they probably wouldn't be able to, but can you imagine an offense with him and Washington? Then it'd just be like everybody else would blur into insignificance because they're just so huge on the line. A big frame. Steve, I don't know. He's fast. He has good straight line speed. So there will be the DK Metcalf comparisons, of course. I don't know if he's that. He scares me, Steve. I just think he's talk about your ultimate boom or bust guy.
Yes.
I just feel like he.
Oh, no. Not a N'Keal Harry again. No.
I know. I think that. Don't
do it.
See, Claire, I'm glad you said that because I think that's going to go through a lot of Patriots fans' minds, and I can't help it. It goes through mine too. But I would also say this: you can't be scared when you can't do that when you're drafting. Like the Patriots, I know they won't, but you can't.
Oh no, they won't.
You can't say. Oh, I went to this well already. It burned me. I can't go back again. I know we can separate Steve for long speed, but and he did some big things. I mean, against Michigan and down the stretch there at the final end of the college season. But he does worry me a little bit. You know what I mean? So share your thoughts on Quentin Johnson.
Yeah, I look at the guy's tape and I say, he's not a total freak athlete, but he has some of that in him. But, when we look at the Patriots, I think, when you talk boom or bust, I think there's more bust with him in the Patriots than it would be with some other teams. And I'm not saying he's not a good player. I think he's a fantastic player. I just think with the Patriots, he scares me.
No, that's actually really. I'm actually really glad you classified it exactly like that, because there's a player that I want to mention in a second who I feel very similarly about. But continue, please.
Yeah, I just think that, I wouldn't want them to draft him. I think he is going to go first or very early in the second round. I don't think he lasts. But
I'd be shocked if he made it. I'd be shocked if he made it more than 5 picks into the second round, because he's someone who, if he doesn't go in the first round, you know how they always like talk about the guys who are going to go early. There's going to be like someone who trades up for him or takes him. There's just no way he doesn't, isn't
right,
one of those
because
guys.
with his size, I mean, he has very good long speed.
Yeah,
he's kind of a long strider, but he just, I don't know. In this offense, I think he just scares me, because I think the bust potential will be higher for him in New England. But you look at his production. I mean, for his entire college career, he averaged almost 19 yards of reception.
I know.
I mean, that's pretty productive. You can't argue with that. It's just, I just worry about that a little bit.
So the reason I mentioned to you a second ago that, talking about him in the Patriots offense is, am I coming okay? But my internet seems to be shaky. Am I coming clear?
Yep.
No, we can hear you.
Okay, so Jalen Hyatt, the Tennessee receiver. I watched a lot of Tennessee games this year. I think he is fascinating as a player. He's a little slight frame, but he's 6 feet tall and he's a blazer. And I watched him, and I was like, several times this year, I was like, man, I'd love to see the Patriots have a guy like this. I can't see him fitting into the offense. I can't do it. I can see him going to the Chargers. I can see him going to the Chiefs. Someone who has like more of a vertical offense. Can't see him here in this offense. And I like the player. I'm not sure he's going to be anything super special. He got some crazy separation. Him and Hendon Hooker had a ridiculous connection last year. But sometimes it comes down to player fit. Like, I look at JSN, Zay Flowers, Josh Downs. I can envision them in the Patriots offense. Some guys, it's just harder than others, to see. And even if you're intrigued with their skill set, and that's really the biggest thing, for me. Steve, let's go into some other day 2 guys, because I want to wrap this up in like 10 minutes or so. I'll say for me, Michael Wilson out of Stanford, I think is phenomenal when he's healthy. The problem is he's never healthy. I mean, that's just the sad reality of it. He is really intriguing. He's just never healthy. And I just think he's going to fall into day 3 because of that. I'm really interested in, I think that Keyshawn Butte from LSU is kind of fascinating. 5'11", 195. He had a really, really bad year this year when he was considered a top half of the first round guy going into the season. I think he's kind of an interesting player. Give me someone who you kind of are keeping an eye on.
Well, this other guy that I'm looking at, and it's the same thing. I'm just kind of a little bit leery of him, but he was a Biletnikoff winner, which is the best tight end in college football, and that's Jordan Addison out of USC.
Yeah,
I mean,
I'm glad you brought him. Thank you. I'm glad you brought him up. I wanted to talk about him too. Thank you.
Yeah, I mean, he's again not the biggest guy. He's only 5'11", 175. That's not big, but he has good speed, 4.4 in the 40, 1.5 in the 10-yard split. I mean, he can play inside, he can play outside. He has agility, all 3 levels of the field. I don't know. There's something about him when I watched him.
Well, here's the thing, Steve. Can I just cut in really quick?
Sure.
But he was incredibly productive at Pitt. Then he moved to USC and was also productive with probably the next generational talent quarterback that will be the number 1 pick next year, Caleb Williams. I feel the same way you do. I don't know what it is. He separates. He runs pretty good routes. He's quick. There's a lot to like about him. For some reason, I just can't put exactly what it is that I don't like about him. If he goes in, let's say he's in the second round. Okay, we're done with day one. He doesn't go. I would be like, and let's say the Patriots go Broderick Jones, Paris Johnson, Darnell Wright. They go tackle, they go corner, whatever it is. I would be like, let's go up and get him, because he could be a guy who I'd be like, okay, he could be the slot guy that we're talking about. He scares me a little bit, but I'd feel better about him in the second than the first. I think the first I would be very leery of him, and I'm not sure exactly what it is.
Yeah, I wouldn't want him in the first round, because I think because of his stature, I think he's going to. I mean, he is agile. He can separate.
He has a burst to him. There's no doubt.
Oh,
I mean, there's no doubt about that.
And his speed, his testing played out that. But I think with NFL press coverage, he might struggle a little bit because he's not a strong guy.
Yep.
So that's the big thing with him. I don't know. I mean, his production's there. He was very productive at Pitt.
Yep.
But the last half a dozen games or so with USC last fall, his production fell way off, I thought.
Yeah, he did. He definitely did. Claire, I know you have to go. So while Steve and I finish up, I just want to say, everyone be sure to follow Classy Claire Cooper. Thank you so much for joining us, and we'll talk to you. I'm sure I'll talk to you and Murph, or we'll have you on after the draft or something like that too.
Oh, I'll be gate crashing soon, and if they take any tight endage, then you're gonna have to have me on, because I'm gonna have to talk about it again. I'm really sorry.
And I'm gonna go bother you and Murph after the draft to talk about how the Patriots screwed up again.
Exactly, and Steve's gonna come back, and it's all gonna be fun. So thanks for listening, guys. Go over to PatsPropaganda.com. At Classy Claire, and don't forget A Claire Perspective. A new episode is out soon, so keep your eyes peeled.
Who's your next guest? Thanks. Do you want to tease it?
Oh no, I can tease it. I'm doing a pre-draft show.
Ooh, nice.
Yeah.
Okay.
So yeah.
Okay, cool.
With whom?
She's keeping it tight-lipped. Uh-huh. You're gonna have to tune in.
Well, thanks for answering the bell for us today. We absolutely enjoyed having you.
Oh no, I would have strong-armed my way on it, even if you hadn't invited me anyway. So I couldn't miss the opportunity to talk to you and try and get you guys over to the dark side of getting tight endage. I think I've actually enticed Derek over to the dark side of getting a tight end in this
You could entice me to the dark side, Claire. There's no doubt. Okay.
Much fun. See you soon, guys. Take care. Bye.
Talk to you.
Take care, Claire.
All right. Now it's just the boys' club again. Now that we kicked her out and we changed our password to the fort, I love that Claire's so passionate about tight ends. But to go back to our earlier conversation, I do think it's a sneaky need, but I have to be careful, of how much rope I give her, because otherwise she was ready to talk about tight ends for the entire hour. We went 40 minutes.
She would have went on another 20 minutes. Easy.
Oh, at least.
That notebook of hers is full.
I love so people listening, I just love the fact that she's just so into it now that she's taking notes and writing things down. That's some awesome. Serious psycho stuff, and I mean that in the biggest compliment, because that is me. Steve and I have people listening who've been listening for a long time know that Steve and I are big into the draft, and not everyone is, and that's totally fine. My dad's a huge Patriots fan. He could give a crap about the draft. He won't watch it live. He'll click and read the profiles of the guys they take, and he'll call it a day. And there's nothing wrong with that. I just love everything about it. And I love that Claire has evolved into someone who has a full notebook. Just you can hear her earlier just rifling through the pages, and it was just awesome. I just love to see it. But Steve, let's get back to our
Chris. Chris had a question about is there any sleepers in the draft that you would draft late in the process, like day 3?
Yeah,
and there's a guy, and again, I don't know where he's going to go. I haven't seen many projections on him, and I'm not even sure.
Oh, you're not going to say that. I'm going to right now. So,
Andre Iosivas from Princeton.
Yeah,
Ivy League guy. Yeah, 6'3", 205, good size. He runs a 4.43.
Yeah.
And he was very productive in the Ivy League. So he's a smart kid. So
Yeah.
I don't know where he's going to end up going, but last year for Princeton he caught 66 passes, which
Wow.
I think they only play in 9 or 10 games there, so that's good production. 7 touchdowns.
I'll throw out a guy. I don't know if he's a sleeper. I just think he's a guy that is kind of getting buried in the mix here a little bit. He's not going to be a day 2 guy. He's going to be an early day 3 guy. That's Xavier Hutchinson from Iowa State. I think he's kind of interesting. He's a senior, 6'2", 203, so better size than a lot of guys in this class. I think the thing that I like most about him is his production, and I like when players show improvement every year at that level, especially because they should be growing. They shouldn't be just the same guy. It's like and I think he he's a perimeter player. He uses his size to make plays after the catch. He's got really good kind of. You can tell when he grabs the ball, he's kind of has like a good grip on it, and he's got a good release. So when you're outside, a lot of cornerbacks are going to try to use their leverage and push you towards the sideline, right? And then use that sideline to help them, so they have themselves, the receiver, and the sideline. He knows how to kind of release and play that boundary corner the way you need to. And as much as I think that they need more of a slot guy, you could make the case they could use an outside player too, because the true outside guy they have is Devontae. And you could make the case that Kendrick Bourne could be that slot guy, but it just seems like there's just something there where we're not just going to get the Kendrick Bourne that we all think is going to happen. I don't know. It's like he's like the biggest tease of all time. Steve, this is not a day 3 guy, but I don't think anyway. I'd be shocked. I do think he's probably a 3rd round pick. Marvin Mims Jr. from Oklahoma, I thought was an interesting player. He averaged just under 20 yards per catch for his entire career. He's a long strider, can really get up, can really get downfield. He can make he can really track the ball well. He's really smooth in his routes. He creates. He has great yak, and able to get the first downs a lot. And the thing that kind of intrigues me about him for the Patriots, he's also a punt returner. And I know they have Marcus Jones, but it never hurts to have another guy who can step in. Especially, I love Marcus Jones. I am number 1 in the Marcus Jones fan club. But you have a guy who's doing punt returns, playing some snaps at receiver. If he's going to take on more corner, he can only do so many things. You need a guy who can also do it. I love that he has some good special teams versatility. I think Marvin Mims Jr. is a name to keep an eye on, because I think that if they don't go receiver early, he's the kind of guy I could see them taking in round 3 or 4.
Yep, and I had him in my mock draft, so because he's a slot guy. He's got the speed, agility, very productive last year. He ran a 4.38, really good speed.
Yep.
He caught 54 passes for 1,000, almost 1,100 yards.
Yeah,
and
it's
6
crazy.
touchdowns.
Yeah.
So I like him as well.
I think he is a guy that you're going to be able to get. Like I said, I don't know if he'll go round 2. I think he's probably a round 3 player. He's a good player. Like, he's another guy I would say that, just like I said for a little while ago, like I said about Josh Downs, and they are different players. If they go like cornerback and tackle, some variation in the first 2 picks, I'll be pounding the table for Marvin Mims, and their 3rd pick. That'll be who I'll be doing. Anyone we feel like we left out, Steve? We're going long today. I knew we probably would, given the positions, and I know that a lot of people have been wanting us to talk about receivers and tight ends. Anyone that we left out, or do you feel good about the body of work?
I feel like we're leaving at a good spot.
Yep. Okay,
And
well,
I have to go anyways.
yeah, it's all right. You have a higher power calling to you.
Yeah.
I will just say this real quickly for the listeners. So we appreciate everybody who's listening for the draft prospect, previews. Steve and I enjoy doing it every single year. Our next show is probably going to be, we haven't really talked about it, Steve. So we're kind of having an off-air conversation on air, probably sometime early next week, I would say, so that we can get ready for the draft next Thursday, which is very exciting, 8 days away. So probably Monday or Tuesday next week, we'll try to get that first round mock for you. Steve and I will go back and forth as we always do, going through the entire first round. I always look forward to this episode, one of my favorites we do all year. So we'll be doing that next week. Please, again, please make sure to subscribe to us on YouTube and Apple Podcasts, anywhere you listen to podcasts. Like, share, leave us a review. Keep us high in the podcast rankings so other Patriots fans can find us. I want to thank Ian Logue over at PatsFans.com. I want to thank Claire Cooper for popping in. Please check out the Claire Perspective. Her podcast is phenomenal, and she does a really good job over at PatsPropaganda.com. I'm happy she was able to join us. Again, for Steve Balistrieri, I'm Derek Havens. Thank you for everyone who's listening to this episode of Patriots 4th and 2. We appreciate you listening, and we can't wait to talk to you next week.